Hello my friends, Virus here. It has now been a week since the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, and since then a lot of new information has come out and I want to talk about it. Some good, some bad, and some in between. So let's dive into the good and bad of Nintendo Switch 2. And I want to start off with a recap of the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. I kind of already did a video talking about some of the stuff that I thought was really cool from the Direct, but I want to go ahead and just recap just in case you didn't see that video. They started with the big new Mario Kart World, and it is slated to release alongside the Switch 2 on June 5th. Which is very exciting. It's going to be really nice to have a Mario Kart right off the bat. I heard Mario Kart 8 Deluxe didn't launch with the original Switch, it launched a little bit after, but still close to release date. So it's going to be really cool to have that game to play day one. They also introduced a new Donkey Kong game, which basically looks like the Mario Odyssey of Switch 2. A very big open world Donkey Kong game that looks really good, and it might be the same developers of Mario Odyssey, if I had to guess, just because of the scope of it and the environments in it. I'd have to say it's probably the same team because it's a very good looking game and it bears a striking resemblance to Mario Odyssey. They also announced Kirby Air Riders that's coming later this year. They announced Metroid Prime 4 is coming as a Switch 2 edition, which we'll get to that in a second. And overall, it just looks like we have a really good first-party lineup. Like I said just a second ago, they announced Switch 2 versions of certain games. Switch 1 games are going to get some revisions on the Switch 2 with better resolution and frame rate, and some also getting new content updates, which is very cool. And if you already own the Switch 1 version, you can purchase an upgrade pack to upgrade it to the Switch 2 version. That's pretty cool. I believe those are going to be $10 to $20, which is a little unfortunate, but it's what it costs. And they even showed off some new peripherals like a camera. They showed us a Pro controller, which looks very, very sleek. And overall, they just did a very good job at showing us what this console can do and what's coming to the console and just getting us excited. And don't even get me started on the third parties. Elden Ring, Silk Song made an appearance, and there's a From Software exclusive coming in the future called the Dusk Bloods. It was just very cool, and Nintendo basically pulled out all the stops. Unfortunately, this is where some of the negatives come into play, which is the Nintendo Switch 2 website. It basically had all the information that they didn't show off at the Direct, and it's rough, at least for a consumer standpoint. They announced that Mario Kart World will be $80. That is a pretty steep climb in price compared to the Switch 1 games, but luckily this is the only one to be confirmed for $80. Donkey Kong Bonanza, and we can assume that Kirby Air Riders and Hyrule Warriors as well, will be $70. And the argument there is Xbox and PlayStation kind of set the market. They've been doing it for years. The Switch 2 is a much more powerful console than the Switch 1. It makes sense that the games will be a little bit more pricey. But speaking of more pricey, the Nintendo Switch 2 versions of the games, if you buy them physically, they will also cost $70. So Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the Switch 2 version of that will be $70. The Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom versions, I believe, are both going to be $70. Luckily, if you have a Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack membership, you can get the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom upgrade packs for free. I think that's a very good way of handling the upgrade packs, at least for the two big Zeldas. And Super Mario Party Jamboree and Metroid Prime 4 are both going to get Switch 2 versions as well, confirming that Metroid Prime 4 will be a cross-gen release, kind of like how Breath of the Wild was. And I haven't even gotten to the console itself. The console itself is going to be $450, a little bit steeper than what I was hoping for, but it's a pretty powerful console, so they're well within their right to charge a bit more. And if you get it with the Mario Kart World Bundle, it will be $500. We are in a day and age where a Nintendo console at launch is $500. And granted, yes, it is a very powerful console, and it probably is very expensive to make, much like how Mario Kart World is probably pretty expensive to make. So I kind of understand why the price is so high, but you're not going to hear me saying that I like the $80 price point for Mario Kart because that's a lot of money. So is $450 to $500 for the Switch 2 console, depending on which version you get. But I was kind of expecting this. The Switch 2 is, again, probably very expensive to make. Same with the games, they're getting more expensive to make. And I believe in a way Nintendo did respond to the pricing. And I believe Bill Trinan did, which is kind of funny because we don't really see Bill Trinan anymore. I believe he basically said at Nintendo they decide the price based on how much goes into making the game. And he used, I believe, Tears of the Kingdom as an example where it was a big game and it took a lot to make, so that's why the Switch 1 version itself was $70. And the same thing applies for Mario Kart World. There was a lot of resources going into making that game, which is why they decided on the $80 price point. But me as a consumer, I'm hoping that at $80, it's the biggest, best Mario Kart ever. And I'm really hoping that there's a lot of content that they didn't show us that we'll be able to see on our own and see that, yeah, this game is totally worth $80. What they've shown off already kind of makes me feel like the price is justified. But if they did decide $80, it's probably a very hefty game with a lot of content, and just probably, it's of course going to be the biggest Mario Kart to date, so we'll see how it is. And the Switch 2 price, of course, it's going to be more expensive because there's probably a lot of really good tech packed into it, and maybe it's a lot of new modern tech that, you know, is really expensive to get your hands on, so that's probably why they decided $450, $500. And I really hope it stays at $450 to $500 because pre-orders in the US have been delayed due to the tariff situation, and Nintendo has taken a step back to decide what they want to do and what's the best course of action. And I really hope the best course of action isn't raise the price even more to like $500 to $600. That would be really unfortunate, and we'll just have to see what happens with this tariff situation and see what happens to the Switch 2's price. They did say that the release date of June 5th is unchanged, so we'll still get the launch of the Switch 2 regardless of these tariffs, but it does freak me out to think of a world with a $600 Nintendo console. That does freak me out. I'm really hoping the tariffs don't cut into their profits that much. We might even see Mario Kart at $100 if that's the case. Like, that's kind of scary. But overall, it is not that bad. Another good example is that the game chat function that they showed off is basically going to be free to everyone until, I believe, March of next year. So they're kind of treating it how they treated it with the Switch 1, where Nintendo Switch Online was free until, I believe, like September of 2017, 2018. I can't remember. Basically, they made Switch Online free for a little while during the first, like, year of the Switch's launch. So they're kind of doing the same thing with Game Chat, where they're making it free for like the first like 9 months, I believe. And then it'll just be like another paid thing within Nintendo Switch Online. You'll need a Nintendo Switch Online membership to use Game Chat. So all in all, it's a mix of good and bad. A lot of good and a lot of bad. The games look great, but they cost a lot. The console looks incredible, but it's going to be a bit more expensive. But with that all said, I am still excited for the Switch 2. A little bit worried because of how expensive everything is, and I wonder how the first sales are going to go, and if I can even get my hands on one of these anytime soon. But I'm still really excited for Switch 2, and I'm really hoping that I can get it near launch if I can. If I can get away with it, I will definitely get it at launch, along with 1 or 2 of the games, I hope. Mario Kart World is the only like first party that I believe is going to be available launch day. So I might get the Switch 2 with Mario Kart World if I can scrounge up the money for that. But I'm very excited for the console. It looks very good. It's a very sleek console. It's powerful. And I'm very excited to see where this next generation goes. But what do you think of the Nintendo Switch 2 with all of this new information coming out? Let me know down in the comments. I probably missed some things, but they will probably get like some of their own videos. Like I do plan to make separate videos talking about Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Kirby Air Riders, the Switch 2 edition games, the game card key. Oh, and I'll also probably talk a little bit about GameCube on Nintendo Switch Online. That was another thing that was announced. Very, very cool. But yeah, thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new, and hit that bell so you never miss any virus content. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Virus out.